can clutter be good for you, essentially? Sometimes you see an article or a topic and you just think, okay, whatever, it's just a random thing. But when you start seeing multiple things on the same topic, that kind of like tweaks your attention. And at least for me, and I start digging into, is there more going on there? So it just so happened that within a few days of each other, The Atlantic released an article called I Love My Clutter, Thank You Very Much. And these are both kind of opinion pieces. And then a couple of days later, New York Times released one called Clutter is Good for You. And then I saw that there's this TikTok trend called clutter core where people were sharing how they are surrounding themselves with stuff. And so I realized that there's clearly something going on here. And it's that idea that maybe there's a backlash against decluttering. This term clutter has been conflating with hoarding, and Marie Kondo has made an industry out of tidying up, of course, at the same time selling products, selling you more stuff. And then there's become this aspect of clutter shaming. And I thought it was an interesting thing. In the Atlantic article in particular, the author quoted a professional organizer over in the UK who said that clutter really should be measured not by the volume of stuff you have, but the owner's feelings about it. And if clutter is causing stress and distraction, of course that's a productivity problem. We all know that. But if it's not, people talk themselves into saying things like, oh, all this stuff around me makes me happy, or I'm just more productive if I have everything around me and I know where everything is. And people are able to talk themselves into living with and convincing themselves that they're thriving with clutter. It goes against what we've talked about multiple times on the podcast. We often talk about the productivity benefits of decluttering. But what do you think, Tana? Can this aspect of clutter core and loving your clutter, can it go too far? Is some level of controlled chaos okay? What do you think of this kind of backlash towards decluttering?
When I read this article about how clutter can be beneficial, the first thing that came to my mind was, okay, this is a piece of garbage. What am I about to read here? I can't believe I'm actually about to read this. So I actually dove into it. The first article made me very angry. The second article is just a long fluff piece. We're still going to link to it, but I just want to warn people that it's just that if you want to waste your time, the second article is a huge waste of time. So my take on it is that the authors really don't know what they're talking about. And when I mean they don't know what they're talking about, I mean they just don't know what it feels like to be clutter free. It's kind of like if you are okay with eating junk food every single day and you do it in controlled portions, is that a bad thing? I mean, it's not ideal, but if you're eating it every day and you kind of like are within your calorie range, it's not the worst thing in the world, but it's not great either, right? Just like if you sleep 5 hours a night and you're kind of okay with it, you can kind of get your stuff done, that's fine. Like we can get easily used to that, and our baseline for what's okay is actually quite low because we can adapt very quickly. However, if you go from 5 hours a night to sleeping 8 hours a night, there's a huge difference in how you feel, how energetic you are, and there's a new baseline of what's possible. So to me, when I read the articles, it just came across as these people just don't know what it feels like to be completely clutter-free and to have like a streamlined home, like a clutter-free home where, I don't know about you, like anytime I come home from vacation or a long trip, when my place is like organized and clean, I just feel so calm and relaxed. Whereas if I come home and it's like organized, but there's like a little bit of chaos, there's like clutter some places here and there, it doesn't quite have the same serene feeling of like calmness and stillness. And to me, when I read the article, it just said, you know what, I'm okay with having a little clutter. And to me, that in itself is okay. But to say that clutter is a good thing and that we shouldn't shame people for having clutter, okay, can agree with that too. Like we shouldn't have to shame people. But to outright say that it's actually a good thing and you should be okay with it, I think that's where I kind of like go, hey, you know, you've gone too far, buddy. You shouldn't be pushing and promoting that clutter is a good thing, because one thing we always like to say is clutter represents delayed decisions. When you have clutter laying around, it just means that you haven't made a decision yet, or you haven't decided yet what you're going to do with it. And that's why it's still there. And that's why it's piling up. However, there's one thing in the article I do like, and that is the observation that someone else wrote, which is hoarding is vertical versus clutter is horizontal. And I actually agree with that. Like when you're a hoarder, you tend to collect a lot of things and it grows, you know, vertically, whereas clutter can actually be horizontally. It can be across all different things and it's just disorganized and it's just, delayed decisions essentially. And so if you're a hoarder, I think that's like the worst place to be, right? If you're a little cluttered, that's not ideal either. But we don't want to have both. We don't want to have clutter and hoarding at the same time. Like that's like having a massive ocean that you're trying to clean up. Like that's just mission impossible right there. So as someone who used to be a hoarder and as someone who used to be a hardcore minimalist and someone who was clutter free for a while too, it's like you can tell the difference that is almost like night and day. It's kind of like sleeping 5 hours versus 8 hours. It can seem like a minor difference until you see the other side. And once you've seen the other side, you go, this is what it can feel like, or this is what a great relationship can look like, or this is what sleeping 8 hours can feel like. Or, if you haven't worked out in a while, you kind of feel okay, but then you start working out for a little bit and you start exercising 3-4 times a week. You just feel like another sense of alertness and productivity and focus that you kind of knew was there, but you didn't really know until you actually went to that line and said, oh, this is what it feels like. And that's, to me, is like ultimately what people should experience is when you have clutter-free stuff around your house, it's much easier to be productive.